Hello, hello, hello. Okay, hi, welcome back, everyone, and thank you for all the kind welcome backs to me. I have no idea if my sound. I think my sound is working. Nothing has changed. It's only been 7 months. Do me a favor. Let me know if the music is too loud. If it's not loud enough, you know the drill. Anyway, here we are. Can you believe it's been 8 months? Yeah, seven to 8 months since we did a stream. I can't believe it. Thank you all so much for your patience while I've been going through this thing. I have a window here between now and sometime in the new year when I should be kind of around. I'm getting my strength back for the next phase. So it seemed like a perfect opportunity to catch up with all my friends online and do some drawing. I hope you all have the reference. I put it on the March tab just because creating a whole new page for today felt a little bit overkill. You're gonna have to bear with me while I just move things around here a little bit. I've forgotten the order where things need to go, so I need to just change that real quick. Otherwise, I won't be able to see what I'm drawing. I hope you're all doing well. I hope everyone's been drawing and hanging in there. It's been some strange times the last few months, but hopefully we can make things a little bit funner. Okay. See, already back to rambling. It's working a little low, but it's working. It says, shut up if you're, sound is perfect, room's a little dark. Music's a tiny bit loud. Then let me, thank you for the heads up. I don't remember the settings for anything. I realized that at 10 to 5, that I don't know what I'm doing here anymore. Anyway, we'll get back into it. As a whim, I just desaturated the reference photos. I think it can help. It actually can help, absolutely, Rick. Great to see you on here, Rick, by the way. Great to see all of you. Lots of familiar faces on in the chat. It's lovely. It can help. It can definitely help with understanding the tonal values. It really can simplify them. It can also give you some surprises when you put things into grayscale, where you think something's much lighter than it was when it was in color, and then you put it in grayscale and you actually look at it on the chart and you notice, oh, it's actually it's darker than I thought it was, or sometimes lighter. I find generally darker. Sometimes I look at skin tones in color and then I desaturate them, and kind of sometimes surprised at how dark they are on the scale. Great stuff. All right, I'm going to get some reference up here. What are we going to do? 15? 15 or, yeah, maybe 15. I'm really sorry, guys. I don't even remember. And it kind of matters at this end. I just need to move things around again a little bit. Sorry. There we go. I think this is a bit more normal now. That goes there. Okay, done. Thank you so much for the donations. It's really appreciated. I didn't have a chance to thank you yet. What a lovely thing to open chat and to see that. So much appreciated. Okay, let's have a look at this first pose. Since we last met, I've had quite a few people actually reach out with certain questions about process, or that. For those of you who are familiar with the process, you're going to have to bear with me a bit. I want to talk through the process as I go, as much for myself, to be honest, as anything else. But I think for those that are coming to this process for the first time, it'll be useful if maybe I talk a little bit more than I might usually about what I'm thinking as far as putting down some lines. So this first pose, for those of you who have access to the reference, if you don't have access to the reference, you can have access to the reference. If you are a member, you can just go to the community chat page and you'll find a link to the reference there, okay? Thanks, Rick. I appreciate that. I'm sure you look great too. First time I'm able to be here for a live stream, says Mars. Lovely to have you along. Great stuff. Okay, let's draw. So we've got a standing pose. I want to look at, it's interesting because I'm going to, as I've discussed many times before, I want to actually push a little bit further. Pencil won't do. A little bit further than I normally do as far as axes are. Not that normally further than I do, I normally push them. Then further than you see in the reference would maybe be a better way to put it. Let's, so we're going to use that for our, oh, I didn't set the timer. And I didn't change my camera angle. That would help, wouldn't it? Yikes. Sorry about that. Music's getting louder? The music keeps getting louder, says Rick. Okay. Let me know. Sorry guys, sorry about the camera. In my excitement to get drawing, I forgot to change it. Okay. Hey Jaeger, how are you? Good to see you on here. Okay, so we're finding general direction, right, of upper and lower torso. And as I said, we're pushing it slightly. We want to push about 10%. And that way, when everything calms down, and quietens down, the pose will, you're giving it the breathing space to I won't say stiffen up, but inevitably figure drawing can stiffen up. Let's move that up slightly so you can see where I put the foot. I'm just finding this is a directional line. It's neither the exterior or interior edge of the form. It's really just direction and to help me understand where this foot is going. Somewhere in there. Let's find a center line. Somewhere in there. This leg is looking awfully short. Let's pull this line up here. Gives our leg a little bit of extra length. Can you turn up your mic? How's that? Let me know. Maybe I'm too loud. Hopefully I haven't blasted the ears off people. It's probably where the volume should have been. Okay. We'll get there. Timer. Never did do the time. We're going to get there, guys. Sooner or later. We'll start the timer. It's not going to make a huge bit of difference, but anyway. I'm actually going to lift up this shoulder line a little. And it's one of the nice things about working relatively light. Is that in focus? I think it's in focus, but let me know if you guys... Can you turn down the beard? That I cannot do. I need the beard. Even though it looks quite dark on the page, we're working relatively light, so we can make adjustments as we need to as we go. So, you know, if we want to push and pull, if we want to pull this line up or we want to push this line up, we have the we have the capacity to do that, you know. As I said, you know, in the post the other day, you know, the potential for hiccups here are, you know, quite probable, but here we are. Focus is spot on. Thank you. Missed the lives. Yes, I miss being here. But here we are. We're back. And we can kind of figure out among us how often we feel like we should do this. Do we want to go back to weekly? Maybe. Let's see. At least between now and Christmas, that might be nice. Once again, finding just direction for things and a general length, right? Don't want to be too concerned. We don't want to be concerned about detail or anything at this point. But I do want to be able to adjust length and proportion and the overall pose and the dynamics of the pose at this stage. Something like so. Yikes, I'm going off the top of the page. I have not really calibrated the zoom on this as well as I could have. Let's see. I'm going to try something here. Hopefully this is okay. Let me know. I think that might help. Okay. Ah, I reckon. Weekly would be fabulous. I think it could be, right? Ah, Thomas, thank you so much. Shame you missed out on Inktober. Don't get me started on Inktober, Thomas. I don't know if you're looking for a rant or if you're just being sincere. But I thought you know my feelings about Inktober. Anyway. We're finding the aces. We want to find the iliac crest. somewhere in here. Oh, this drawing's not good. Anyway, rib cage sitting in here. We've got our clavicle roughly kind of plotted here with the pit of the neck coming down, sternum, arch of the rib cage. Okay, so we've got the most basic elements of the pose down, right? Now would be the time to change proportion, right? And if you feel like, there's enough detail on the page to be able to step back at this point. You want to hear my feelings about October? Okay, give me a second. There's enough information on the page at this point to be able to say, okay, are my legs too long? Is my torso too short? Blah, 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 blah. Go through a checklist. Or you'll stand back and go, my legs are too long. Okay, then hit the brakes now and change them. And at this point, changing the legs might literally just be a case of extending this line or saying, well, actually, you know what, this foot is about here, which it probably is, because if you look at the reference and you look at the relationship between the left and the right leg, we have an angle, right? We have an angle going something like this, because the right leg is back in perspective, right? It's going away from us like this. So I know people struggle a lot with proportion, but I think that a lot of the time it's because they're trying to fix proportion at the wrong stage of the drawing and the development of the drawing. So something for us to be mindful of. Trapezius coming down this way. Eyes are roughly here. We're just going to put in just a very kind of rough indication of where those facial features are. Okay, center line. So let's start thinking now about the next kind of stage, because now we can start to add some anatomy onto here. So, you know, thinking about large ideas, we want to think about large muscles, right? And then we'll reduce down to small muscles, and then we can make judgment calls on just how much we need to really, you know, dial in as far as scale and what it is that we want to show. Because, you know, your understanding of anatomy might be vast, but then it's about making choices on what it is that you actually want to show, right? What helps tell the story, what helps propel the image forward or to help it speak to the audience. It's not always a case of the more you know, the better in a way. You want to understand the large ideas. The small stuff, to some degree or another, tends to take care of itself. I'm a bit worried about the way that these relationships between these. Anyway, the rant. No, it's not really. You know, it's not really rant. The thing with October that really frustrates me is when people start posting on Instagram all month. Oh, Inktober, and they're working digitally all month. Well, what is this? What? Because you're working in what looks like ink digitally? This is absurd. If you wanted to understand the spirit of Inktober, work in ink. Don't work digitally and then just hashtag Inktober. It's so lazy and it really bothers me. Just, I don't know. So anyway, that's my feelings on October. Also, it's like, do you really need a month to dedicate? Like, either draw or don't draw. You don't need a month to dedicate to a style or a certain way. Just draw in ink or don't draw in ink. It's very simple. How this thing became a thing is beyond me. Inktober. What about March? February? Thinking about the obliques, I'm just starting to think about mass. You know, where we have these large forms connect, in this case from the upper torso to the lower torso. One of the large ideas that connect these two things is the obliques, right? Because the obliques are attached to the iliac crest. I'm distorting a little bit. Let's try that. Thank you for the heads up. really agree regarding ink turbo. It's not a hill to die on, but it's just a feeling. My personal opinion on it, you know. And if you look, working in ink is a beautiful thing. If you genuinely work in ink and you want to set yourself a challenge of 30 days working in ink, more power to you. And I support that and would encourage that. But don't draw digitally for a month and pass it off and make out like you've done something courageous. Just stop with that. Anyway, the oblique is the large idea that connects, one of the large ideas, right, that connects the upper and the lower torso, because the oblique comes down and it meets up with the aces. So with that in mind, we can use the oblique. And, you know, if we think about boxes, right, if we think about a box for the upper torso and then a box for the lower torso, the oblique really is kind of like that connecting idea. It's also an opportunity to show compression on one side and extension on the other, right? So it's a very useful thing. As many of you who are, you know, long-time watchers of the stream know how important I feel like the aces is. Those 2 points of the iliac crest here and here, where the iliac crest comes down, sometimes referred to as the belt line, because that's where belts tend to hang. In my opinion, the aces is one of the most important forms on the body. As far as us understanding geographical kind of landmarks that we can use to tie things together, it's also the aces is where obviously so many, it's the meeting point for so many anatomical ideas. So it's a really useful one. Anyway. Breast there, then we're just going to give a little bit of form to the arms. I mean, the elbow joint, you may notice that the elbow actually runs, if we think about this as a box, right, for the rib cage and the torso, the elbow kind of runs about halfway between the two. So it's a useful-ish form of measurement. And coming down like so. Why the background music so majestic? Haha, why not, would be the question, sort. Right? I'll tell you something about music. For me, at least, when I'm drawing, instrumental music is really the key. Can't, generally speaking, especially if I'm trying to focus or I'm trying to talk in this kind of situation, I can't listen to music that has words. That's not going to happen. So coming up here, latissimus, it's also kind of, you know, the scapula is at the back of the form, but the scapula is influencing this mass right here as well. Coming into the deltoid, the shoulder, which we're actually going to kind of see in this way, and then we're going to kind of transition straight into the tricep in here, something like so. Coming off the trapezius here, the deltoid. So yeah, I find film music really a really useful kind of thing to draw to. At least from my mind, be a little bit more interesting than just that. Coming down this way, we have also attaching once again at the aces the oblique, fitting in here, fitting in this area here. This drawing could not be uglier. Well, it's a warm-up. Doug, hope you're well, man. Take care. Hopefully see you next week. Thanks, Rick. Yeah, so So legs, let's have a look. Let's refine a little bit of the anatomy here. Coming down. Knee's going to be sitting about here. So I just want to think about. And let's be really mindful of the fact that we've got a lot of overlapping forms. Overlapping forms just in general. Whether it be from the upper arm to the lower, to the forearm, you know, the upper leg down to the lower. Tie everything together. One thing you see far too much in people that are kind of still finding their way with figurative drawing is this tend to start and stop ideas and not overlap forms, and you end up with something that, you know, I tend to kind of refer to as like almost looks like a balloon person, you know, like the Michelin Man or something like that. We really want to exploit the idea of overlapping forms as much as possible. So, you know, we've got this line coming down this way, meeting up with the knee here, and then coming down this way, and would actually end up then meet up with the calf. But then on the calf side, we almost want to start that idea up here and then come down like so, right? Look at the way I'm not starting, like this line starts up here, but this one starts down here, right? So there's this overlapping kind of idea which will really help kind of bring rhythm or help maintain the rhythm throughout the drawing, right? Something like so. We can use the sartorius as a subdivider. Sartorius coming down this way, coming down to the side of the leg here, attaching at the knee. We also have the tensor fasciae latae coming off the aces. So, you know, if we look at just coming back to the aces again, once again, we've got the sartorius coming down this way, longest muscle in the body. Tensor fasciae latae coming down this way and actually coming down, meeting up with something called the iliotibial tract on this side of the leg. And then we've got rectus femoris, which is one of the quadricep muscles kind of coming down this way. That is also attaching at the aces. So you can start to get a sense of how important understanding where that point of the iliac crest, the aces, is, and how it helps tie so many things together, right? Once again, sartorius coming down this way. Look at the way you then start to get this lovely kind of subdivision doing this, right? It's good stuff. His knees a little lower. Very, very slightly this leg is going away from us, but it's the upper leg is barely. The knee is really lower because of the tilt in the pelvis. Where are we at time-wise? 16 minutes. We're actually probably closer to 20, right? Since I actually started the clock a bit late. Yeah, this drawing is abysmal, but we'll just continue. Just in the interest of warming up. Speaking of warming up, after I saw you last in March, believe it or not, there was probably about 4 months where I wasn't able to pick up a pencil at all. And very occasionally, there was maybe a couple of times over the, you know, the whole treatment where I tried to draw just a bit. But this has probably been the longest break for drawing. But I probably maybe make an argument ever. So, you know, to say that I'm rusty would be a little bit of an understatement. I've been drawing the last few days a bit, so trying to, well, also one of the reasons I wanted to do the stream, keep me honest, get me back in practice. but I'm not, yeah, this drawing is such a mess. We are somewhat done with the diagrammatical stage here. If we were to continue this drawing, this is probably where we would start thinking about light and tone. We'll start shadow mapping and all of that good stuff, which we will do as we proceed through the session. But I think for this one, I'm going to call it. Oh, you're too kind, Andrea. But well. Look, it is what it is. It's fine. Luckily, it's fire season. You guys know where all good drawings go to die. Let us move on to the second pose. How is Darling Penny? Darling Penny is absolutely fine. Thank you for asking. She has been a tower of support this last year. She's been absolutely brilliant, and I'm finally have the strength again to be able to walk her now, which is wonderful. So yeah, she's great. Could be worse. Okay, next pose. So now we have, for those of you who are drawing along, we have a back pose, back seated pose. I'm going to reset the plot here. Let me just talk about something quickly here about these back poses. We need to be mindful of the fact that, you know, especially when you're looking at a back pose and let's say arms are forward, there is very, very little information in the back that is sometimes visible, right? So this is where we really need to switch gears and, as we like to say, you know, draw not only what we see, but what we know. That way we can bring visual interest to the drawing and hopefully give the viewer something to look at. Because if you blindly copy what we see in front of us, we're going to potentially end up with a very uninteresting drawing. So we'll try and do a bit of that right now. I saw a video where Bob Ross kept a baby squirrel in a shirt pocket. A real baby squirrel? But might be good for clicks. You know, it's funny, I was having a discussion back in January before I got re-diagnosed and all this nonsense. Having a conversation with some friends, and they were talking me into dressing as Bob Ross for the stream for Halloween. And I had every intention of doing it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to stream at Halloween, but it would have been funny. And I could have had a squirrel in my pocket. Who knew? Okay, let's draw. Oh, let's reset the timer. A real baby squirrel blew my mind. You know, it's funny you should mention Bob Ross. I saw only yesterday that he was only 52, I think, when he died. So what a shame. Okay, axis for the shoulders. You guys know it's the thing I like to find first. Now let's find these large rhythmical ideas for upper and lower torso. We're going to push that to about there. And I do like to find the spine real early on when I'm working on back poses. Because the spine, obviously, stating the obvious, but it works as such a good center line. So it's a really useful one to kind of establish. So we're coming up, the glute here, the buttock. Let's find that those sacral dimples and the sacrum. It's going to be sitting in about here, right? Once again, very hard to see. We can see a hint of shadow right about here for the sacral dimple. That is enough to tell us, okay, this is the beauty of understanding a little bit of what's going on under the surface. Because just from that one shadow on this side, I know, okay, sacrum's here, we're going to represent that in a triangular way. Iliac crest is going to be coming up this way, going around to the front of the form, if we could see it. It's sitting in here. And so this is where having a little bit of understanding of the anatomy is so useful. Thank you, TK19. It's great to be back. Bob Ross next year, please. Tina, yeah, if we're doing this next year, we'll make it happen. There's no mistakes, just happy little accidents. That was his thing, right? Yeah, lovely sentiment. I personally, I'm not a huge fan of happy accidents. And that's not to throw any shade on Bob Ross, trust me. The problem with happy accidents is they're not repeatable. And that's a problem. Especially if you want to be able to repeat something, an idea or a process or a formula over and over. If you're relying or hoping for happy accidents, you leave yourself really in a compromised kind of position, right? So while it's nice if you make a mistake and it becomes a happy accident, that's great, but not a good strategy as a process, if that makes sense. Okay, so we have essentially got, we could put a little line across here just very lightly to represent, to show the idea of this box for the pelvis, for the lower torso. That will be sitting right about there, right? Rib cage is sitting in this portion in here. So I'm just going to kind of get past just drawing lines of direction or the exterior kind of edges of where the form might be, and start to throw in a little bit of volume. This is also, excuse me, this is also going away from us. So I want to be thinking of that egg. I want to be thinking volumetrically. You know, I don't want to just be thinking in terms of a series of shapes. Just re-establish our spine sitting about there. Once again, even though I've only drawn the upper and the lower torso, it's a pretty good point to say, do my proportions look roughly okay? Yeah, I think so. Good enough for now. The head is leaning forwards, so while we can't see it because it's behind the hair, we know that the occipital ridge is about here, trapezius coming down this way, like so. Ear is actually sitting about here, and her face, if we could see it, we can see the side of her face just about there. Scapula. Once again, some of this stuff is almost not visible, or very, very slightly visible, but we're going to draw it in because, once again, we want visual information, right? Scapula on this side, sitting roughly about here. Now, I can't see the trapezius, the V of the trapezius or the latissimus or any of that stuff, but I'm going to draw it because it's going to help, once again, bring visual information. So trapezius comes down in an athletic form. We'd be able to see it quite clearly coming down this way, sitting about here. The triangle of the trapezius coming off the ridge of the scapula there, coming down into a V shape here. The latissimus coming down this way, attaching about here. Something like that. We'd see the latissimus. It just kind of peaks behind the trapezius here, but we just see it kind of, it peaks there. Once again, I can't see it on my model. Doesn't matter. Got some compression here where obviously the rib cage and the lower torso are meeting. So we're going to just, get some of that sitting in there. And then our rib cage coming in here. Deltoid. This arm's coming down. Now, measurement, you know, how am I measuring? Well, I'm looking at the top of the mass of the buttock ends about here. And if I just make a visual kind of estimation, I go across, elbow sitting about here. So that kind of gives me the length of my upper arm sitting in here. Something like so. The left shoulder is practically detached. Yeah, it's definitely sitting off the form, let's say. I did hear that about Bob Ross. Yeah, I heard he was a drill instructor for the USAF. Yeah, I heard all kinds of like rumors that, you know, he was like a Marine and he'd seen some crazy stuff. Who knows? Maybe he did. I'm sure that the painting, regardless, was a nice kind of change of pace for him. Paint a tree nugget. Nice. Maybe I should be shouting during the stream too. Might be good for engagement. Okay. Now, what do we have? We have top of the head is going to be sitting about here, right? Once again, hair is kind of draped over this way, kind of coming across the form, something like that. And you can actually see a little bit of a hair down here. But we have her feet, which are kind of interesting, and they're going to be a bit fun to draw, hopefully. And at this scale, they should be just large enough where we can actually, where you can't just avoid them. Let's put it that way. You can't just say conveniently, oh, well, you know, I'm just going to draw blobs for feet. No, sorry. We're going to have to do a little bit better than that. Like, you know, we don't have to go crazy or anything, but. So heel is going to be sitting about here. The pads, the you know, meaty pads of the feet are here, coming down to almost like a V shape here, right? And then you've got the big toe coming off here, sitting in here, and then the rest of the toes sitting in something like that, right? The other foot, in relationship to this one, well, the heel's sitting about here. And then that exterior edge is really quite straight. Then we come down, and once again to almost to kind of like this V shape sitting here, which is actually, this sits behind. My measurements are off there, sorry. Not that it really matters, I could just leave it where it is, but in the interest of, you know, following the reference. Sitting about here. Something like that, and then that big toe there, and then those little toes sitting in here. Calf coming up, and obviously behind the form here, right? Would make for a good foot study, absolutely. You could completely zoom in on just this area here and make it a study in its own right, 100%. Yeah, and which I have done, and I do as far as when looking for hand or leg studies to do. I don't just look for photos that are close-ups of those things. Sometimes it's the photo where they're not the focus that they actually make the best study, or could certainly be a very interesting study. So yeah. Tend to be very careful with things like ribs. For those of you who've been here before, you know what's about to be said. anything that has a repetitive kind of pattern, like ribs, for example, I tend to be very, 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 very cautious of how I approach them, because if you put too much emphasis on them, which is really easy to do, it's all the eye sees. The eye will go straight to it, and then that's that, and then the drawing's over. It's because it's all people will see, especially if they're not drawn absolutely perfectly. So yeah, we need to be careful. Okay, so my rough block in here is, for all intents and purposes, kind of done. Now I'm going to shadow map. And by shadow map, I basically mean just finding the areas of what causes the shadow, the turn of a form, right? So when I say I'm shadow mapping, what I'm really looking for is where the form turns in space, and we go from the lit side of the form to the shadow side of the form, right? So for example, even though it's a very, very soft turn, I'm gonna just throw in a core shadow here, showing where we go from the lit side here down into the tone down here, into the shaded side. Here we have a cast shadow coming off here, going into a softer core shadow, this area here. And I'm just going to throw in some of these core shadows. Then I'll go in and tie down the drawing a bit more and put a bit of emphasis on this stuff. It can help, even putting in foreshadows can help just refine proportion or help problem solve as we go. If there's an area of the drawing you're struggling with, sometimes putting in these tones can help. Because, you know, like if you take this right buttock, for example, you know, without the core shadow in there, we've got this large volume. Then when we put the core shadow in, now we've subdivided that large volume. We've made it more manageable, so to speak, right? We've now divided it into kind of like a 70-30 kind of division. And that will help us go, oh, might not be to put that in and go, you know what, this could actually probably be a little bit smaller. Make that refined. So it can be a useful tool. It's a cast shadow. Excuse me. The mic makes you sound like a robot. I can barely hear you when you're too far from the mic. It's right in the chest, so I'm not moving away from the mic. I'll try and be more mindful of it. Sure what I can do about that. So it's good, but yeah. Okay, I'm going to now go in. I'm going to just do some tie down. Talked before. See how it goes. It's picking up on the software. It sounds like it's dying, does it? Give it a chance. You know what? Shall we put the time out? And see if I'll change the battery and see if it helps all over this as a whole battery. 1 second. Sorry guys. Let's see if I can fix this. All right, let's see if that's any better. Okay, there's a new battery. Please let me know. And maybe if I put it down here a little, that might help. Now it's stopped. But you can hear me, I'm hoping. I'm going to assume you can. It's a bit of a delay on the chat. Okay, thank you, Bill. Much better. Good. Okay, let's hope it behaves itself till the end of the spring, and then I can get a new battery for next time. Sorry about that, guys. Chris, thank you very much. Welcome back to yourself. It's clear. Good. Okay, hopefully that did it. For long-time viewers of the stream, you know that the microphone has been an ongoing issue because I need to wear one of these lavalier mics. I can't use a mic that's seated somewhere stationary. So it comes with its own issues. Volume up a smidge. All right, let me know if that's good. Hopefully that will do it. Let me get back to drawing. Let's have a look at something now, because I'm about to go in and just start tying down this drawing. When we look at, for example, a journey from here, let's say, all the way up to where the elbow is up here, we've got an incredibly long and complex, potentially complex kind of journey going up this way. It's really important that we have our wits about us. Talk about setting myself up to fail. We have our wits about us when we're drawing a line like this, because you really want to be thinking to yourself as you go. It's so important, in my opinion. And look, as you get experience, you can tone down this as an idea, or hopefully it'll just be more to the point. Hopefully it'll become more subconscious. But I'm asking myself, what is it I'm drawing and where am I in the proceedings? Right? So if I start off down here, for example, I want to be very mindful of when I'm coming to the end of like what's probably gluteus medius here, and I'm coming up to the oblique, sitting in here. So right there was a direction change, because I said to myself, okay, I'm coming up this way. That right here is where the direction changes. Now I'm into the oblique, and the oblique's excuse me, continuing its journey up here. But what's this? I'm hitting the rib cage now. So, and now I want to be mindful that I try and keep a little bit of visual interest, not too much, but up to where the armpit is. So hopefully you can see. Let me actually see if I can just quickly, I don't know if this will work. Yeah. Okay, there's a close-up of this. I will remember to take it off close-up. But if we just look at what I drew there, we can only see it from where the oblique is here. But you can see the oblique coming up, and then I'm thinking about the rib cage. And even in here, there's direction change within the rib cage itself. And then at this point, I'm starting to think about where the subtlety from the scapula and the latissimus, that, you know, where the volume and the mass of those things will kind of start to kind of meet in this region, right? As the rib cage continues its journey up this way. And in here, we got this very, very subtle direction change right here, right? Where we go from the rib cage into what is now a little bit more fleshy, right? And then we go up and we go into where the compression from the arm and the rib cage are kind of meeting, and they're creating this little bit of extra volume. It's really important, in my opinion, that we think in those terms. And when I'm drawing, I'm asking myself, what is it that I'm drawing? When is there going to be direction change? And how can I go about showing that in what will hopefully be, in an interesting way, right? Trapezius coming up this way, meeting up with the scapula, and then that little bump right there, and then we come down to the deltoid, and then we have a direction change this way, right? And then the deltoid coming down this way, and trying to keep that a little bit straight, and then it meets up with the tricep, which is going to be another direction change coming down this way. This is where so much, in my opinion, this is where so much of the, I would say the magic, maybe magic's a strong word, this is where a lot of the meat happens, and where a lot of the visual interest happens. Okay, so we have the glute here, but then here we actually have the side of the leg coming in, and then we're coming in, and we're coming down, and that's obviously traveling through the knee, which should probably be sitting up here somewhere. Actually, it's probably a bit lower because this leg is coming in here. It is, in fact, turning about there. So yeah, so just something to keep in mind when you're drawing is direction change. And inevitably, I see a lot of people starting off on their journey, they just don't think about direction change at all. And so they have very simple shapes for things, which is good. All these things should start simply, but at some point we do want to go from simple to, you know, something a little bit more refined and a little bit, hopefully a little bit cooler looking. It's the general idea anyway. Okay, so this side is a little bit easier because they're shorter journeys, right? This was a very, very long journey from here all the way down to here. This side, there's a few more pit stops along the way, so it can be a little bit more forgiving, but I'm still thinking about those things. It's like we've got the same kind of idea right here, coming up to where this meets up with the armpit, and then we can see the arm coming down this way, and then into the tricep or the bicep sitting in there, which generally speaking is a lot, I expect, unless it's compressed, it's a lot more of a straight passage than people tend to draw. If we look at the deltoid, the shoulder muscle, if you're looking at the reference, if we come around the form, you might see that the direction change actually starts about here. And then we come up and the deltoid comes up this way, up to here. And then we come in and then we have the direction change for the trapezius that comes in this way and then meets up with the spine there. Once again, overlapping shapes there, right? Always looking for opportunities for those overlapping forms. Something like so. Okay, let's keep going. A big toe sitting there, coming in, the mass of the foot there. In there. Something like so. Do me a favor, will someone just put something in the chat so I know that I'm still connected? Whenever I see the chat not move for a while, I know a lot of people are just drawing, but I get paranoid that I've actually disconnected and I'm just sitting here drawing to myself. So someone could just give me a sign of life, that would be awesome. All right, coming in. There we go. Thank you guys, appreciate it. It's not vanity, trust me, I just don't want to be drawing and you're all like wondering where I am. Emily, is it? Emily, welcome. Hey, good to have you along. If you go to the posts tab, they've changed the name of it, I think, and now I think it's called the posts tab on my channel page. You'll find a link to the reference there, Emily, and you can draw along. We are very concentrated. Nice. I figured you might be, but you know. Okay. Something like so. And things are kind of coming together. It's not too bad. So yeah, her ear is sitting here. And then there's kind of like her hair is sitting here. She has a very tight, what I think is a perm in her hair, which is making seeing anything resembling kind of hair shapes tricky, if that makes sense. For those of you who have the reference, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's in situations like this, I might take the liberty just to kind of change things up just a little bit. Just hopefully to bring a little bit more visual interest than what's currently there. All right, let's block in some tone, shall we? Rick, I do not have those files. You're asking the impossible. Not sure anyone has those files. Anyway. Okay, let's block in some tone. I'm just going to start with some very simple block in for the hair and for what is in light and what is in shadow. And you can see here we have like this, we have a pocket of light here. And just find some basic tone in here. Now, there was actually coarse shadow. Sitting in here. Then we have a cast shadow coming across this foot, which actually conveniently ties in from where this mask kind of turns in here. And that cast shadow comes across this way and down, and it sits, and then kind of this foot reveals itself right about there, so which is actually kind of handy. We can put all of this into shadow. Okay, now I think I'm going to just do a little, let's just push just a little bit further on now. We'll just go back in. I kind of like getting a base tone that is, let's say, almost the same for everything across the entire image, and then going in and finding my darker darks and kind of building up incrementally. Okay. Now let's just do a little bit of blending. blending in the direction that the form is moving in. Remember, we never blend or draw against form. That makes sense. Okay. Take care, Tina. Lovely to see you again on here. Hopefully see you next week. All right, good stuff. Okay, I'm gonna just, I don't want to flog this drawing to death. I think which is easily done beyond this stage. I will just go in. Can you please repeat the tip about blending and form? Sure. So basically, you know what I'm going to do, Licart, is I'm going to let me just finish this drawing, and then I'll do a really quick demo of talking about that stuff, okay? Because it does bear repeating. It is important. But I would just go in probably at this point. Thank you, Tina. That's incredibly kind of you. I would just go in at this point and probably, because you know it's so easy to overcook a drawing. That I think at this point I might just go in, maybe just, you know, hit a little bit of the hair just with a little bit of kneaded eraser, just really just to help bring just a little bit of texture. You could even just hit the drawing here and there. And I like to sometimes, you know, like for example right there, what I just did there, as far as just erasing from the outside of the form into the form, you can just give a lot of kind of character to the charcoal, just with a little bit. Be careful you don't overdo it, and trust me, it's easily done. But you know, just a little bit here and there of just helping just bring some character. And I think I'm going to call it there. We've really gone 35 minutes on this one. Yikes. Okay. It does mean that I think that we may skip one of the poses we have in the session. One of the next two, because then they're kind of similar. Let me give you just following on from that, the idea about repeat the tip about blending and form. Okay. So let's just very quickly take the idea. Sorry, I just wiped my hand and now I have to let it dry for a second. Thanks, Rick. Okay. Let's say, for example, we're going to just draw a real quick box. That's lower torso, right? Upper torso might be sitting in here. Something like that. Okay, good enough. Sacrum sitting in here. Iliac crest, iliac crest. Our butterfly shape for the buttocks, right? The butterfly motif sitting in here. Maybe the leg is going down this way. Something like that. Maybe this leg is sitting in here. Our oblique is sitting in here. Maybe on this side it's stretched slightly. Now, what we have here, while it might look like there's a bunch of kind of lines throughout this whole kind of process, keeps coming back to the same thing with the mantra I keep talking about over and over and over and over again, which is I'm trying to think about volume first, then shape and that type of thing, right? So I'm trying to think about these things as a series of volumes and masses, not just lines. There is no such thing as a line on the body, right? What is a line? A line merely represents the edge of a form that is turning in space, right? You need to be mindful of that. Okay, so widest point is going to be about here. So with that in mind, like, you know, let's say I've got this is my very kind of basic shape here. Muscles going up this way, something like that. I want to subdivide this form, right? And I want to be thinking about where a form turns, right? In its simplest terms, if we really think like in very simple terms, right? Okay, where is this form turning in space? I think it's fair to say that if let's say our light source is coming from this direction, this is lit, and this is going to be in shadow. Right? Depending on where if this light source is truly coming from this direction, this is probably in shadow too, up here, right? So here we've got a very kind of, for want of a better term, black and white example of where a form turns in space, from here to here, right? Very, very clear. As this form softens, so now let's say we take that same kind of idea, but we turn it into a cylinder. Right? Something like that. So half this form, let's say once again, light source is here. So this is going to be in light. Probably at around this point right here, the form is going to be turning in space away from the light. And this edge here is essentially what this edge is here, right? So this, once again, we want to use the same toning convention as we did for the cube. We're probably looking at something like that, right? But this is a sphere. It's not a cube. So what is this? This is essentially the core shadow, right? Why is the core shadow darker than this side, than here? This is the darkest part of the form, because here our light is bouncing off the surface here and bouncing back in this direction and actually lighting the shadow side of the form, right? So the core shadow is, even though it's closest to the light in some ways, this edge here is actually the darkest part of the form, right? Before it turns in space and the object starts to be influenced by the bounced or refracted light back onto the form, right? So when I'm drawing, for example, coming back to our model here, and now let's say in this case the light source is coming from here, right? Well, this volume, if I think of it in terms of a cube or in box like, you know, like when you pixelate something, I could probably think of it in these types of terms. Now, in actual fact, it's a much softer, rounder term, but the core shadow, whether we see a core shadow or not, and you don't always see them. Sometimes a turn is just soft and we go from light into shadow. But this core shadow can be a really useful tool to bring us from the lit side of the form into the shadow side of the form. And it helps us do what we were talking about called shadow mapping, right? So all of this would be, let's say, in shadow in here. We've probably got something like this going on. We've probably got a cut now here, interestingly enough. We've probably got cast shadow in here. So this part of the form is going to be even darker. It's going to be devoid of light altogether. And in fact, here probably too, did the same thing, right? So, but you can get away. And here's another thing. Be mindful not to put too many tones in a drawing. Try and that's why what I said, when I'm done, I go in first and I give an even tone to everything, right? So this is the same as this is the same as this, and if I continued this down here, it's going to be the same. One of the biggest traps that people fall into is trying to copy all the different turns in tone or in form that they see in the reference or on the model, and they end up just with noise. You end up with what I think my instructor referred to it as like pebbles on a beach, right? Because it's like you're trying to describe everything, right? Simplify, squint, look at the model, squint, ask yourself. The first statement is ask yourself, what is in light, what is in shadow? That's all that matters. What is this tone? What is this tone? Even though some parts like here are going to be darker, just simplify that statement, that question for yourself initially. What is in light? What is in shadow? Typically, if we go through the entire form, and let's say we find this throughout, I would then go in and go, okay, well actually there's some, this is actually going to be a bit softer as the form turns here, and it's actually softer here, but I actually notice where the light hits here, it's lighter than it is, say down here. But I would still try and simplify that down to like maybe 5 different tones in the entire drawing, maybe 3 in the light and 2 in the shadow. So right here I've got 1, 2, and then in the lit side I've got 1. I might have 1 more, and then I might have the color of the page, which I'm using as the highlight. The page is the lightest light, right? It's like kind of like watercolor. I cannot go any brighter than that. So I want to simplify. Even though if I started using the color picker in Photoshop on the model, I'd probably see 30 different half tones. I want to simplify it down to a simple statement. Do that and you'll find a massive increase in the readability of your drawing. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Oh, thank you, Javi? I'm probably pronouncing your name, I'm butchering your name, I know I am, and I apologize for that. I was worried about you. Well, thank you, and I'm here. But now I'm here. We'll hang out for a while, and then I'll have to take off in the new year for a little bit, but then, hopefully we'll all get back together. That's assuming it's sitting on a bright background. If it was sitting on a black background, there would be no fill. That is a very correct observation, Rick. If we were in the vacuum of space, for example, and there was nothing for the light to reflect on, you would go from being in light to being in shadow, and there would be no reflected light. You are absolutely right. But you will also notice that there are, and I always forget the name of this artist. If you look back across the Renaissance period, a lot of stuff was like cherubs in clouds and this type of thing. And in those cases, they would really amp up the reflected light. Like, for example, because, they were sitting on white clouds. So, for example, if you just look at this, right, this idea here, if I just take here and I do this, it's like we're adding, it's almost like we're adding another light source, right? If I do that, can you see that now here? Let me just zoom in on that. That one was a bit more successful than the first one. Oh, there you go. So now we really get the sense that there's a lot of bounce light in here. It's not quite as bright as here, but it's and it never should be. That's one other little trick. Never let your halftones in your shadow side be as light as the lit side, and vice versa, generally speaking. Okay. Blending in the direction of the form. Did that make sense, what I was talking about? Let me show you that, because that is also important. Just real quickly. Oh, let me change my camera. Okay, let's just talk about blending in the direction of the form real quick, and then we'll move on. Let's say I've got a cylinder. Now, although not beautifully drawn, I think we would all agree that we're seeing the one face of the cylinder here, and this cylinder is kind of going away from us in this direction, right? If we had to kind of all agree on what was happening, we're getting something like that, right? So in a case like this, let's say I'm looking at my model and I notice, oh, the light's actually coming from this direction. Okay, I want to get my core shadow in here. This is all going to be in shadow, we know that much, because it's sitting away from the light. Core shadow, reflected light sitting in there. Now, the point I was making is this. When I blend, I might want some halftone in this area here, right? As the form turns, let's say this area in here was the lightest part of the form. I want to blend in this direction. If I start blending in this direction, and this applies to drawing too, when you're drawing foreshortening or anything, you want to blend like this, right? And it will feel organic. If I start blending like this, I start killing the feeling of it moving away in space. Right? So you always want to kind of blend, like I'm looking at this line and this line. That's the direction I want to be blending in, like that. Then you maintain the integrity of the direction the form is moving. Okay, let's draw. Okay. As I said, we have 3 more poses. We're not going to do 3 more poses. The last one we're going to do is a 5-minute job at the end. So we've got 2 poses here. This is where democracy comes into play. We're going to call them poses 3 and 4. You're very welcome. I'm glad that helps. Poses 3 and 4, which one do you guys want to do? Because we're not going to do them both. We're going to do pose 5. That's the 5-minute job. Which one do you guys want to do? Pose 3 or 4? And then we'll do that one. 20-25 minute pose, and then we'll finish with a 5-minute job at the end. It'll come down to whoever's quick enough in the chat, and we'll go with what you guys think. Let me reset the clock. Okay. No preference. 3, says James. 3, 3, 3. 3 it is. First 3 people, say 3. Sorry, Laura. Democracy has spoken. I think 4 would have been easier, but I think 3 is probably a bit more of a challenge. But I think that's good. So, all right, 3 it is. I would encourage everyone to do pose 4 as well in your own time. I'll probably do pose 4 in the morning. But they are somewhat similar, so I don't think there's any harm in you know, leaving one of them for today. All right, let me find a pencil. You'll do. All right, let me hit the clock. Okay. 3 is a prettier pose. Yeah, that I agree with. Okay, when I'm looking at a pose like this, though, I do want to be thinking about, okay, where is the, how does it want to sit on my page? This comes into this idea of people tending to draw off the edge of the page or not centering a piece on the page quite right. Well, I want to be thinking about that at this point. You know, if I'm thinking, okay, the knees are probably about here, the shoulder is probably about here. So that's going to, I don't want to just say, okay, the shoulder is going to start in the middle, because then by the time I get to the feet and legs, they'll literally be over here somewhere. So it's always useful to think about that from the get-go. Quite a strong angle on this arm coming down this way. This hand sitting on the edge of the box here, supporting her weight. And she's like tipping her whole lower torso. Kind of sitting in here, right? I'm going to just draw, just blocking in right now, just trying to get a rough idea of where things will go. Center line. Hand is here. Hip is about here. Aces is going to be about here. It's almost like the lower torso is slightly going away from us, so something like that, right? Roughly. We can't see much of this business, but we know it's there, so we need to draw it, because it's gonna, we need to tie things together. Okay, so then this leg coming down in this direction. The box that she's sitting on is going off this way. I'm very loosely just trying to block this in. And when I look at this left knee, where is it in relationship to her hip? It's kind of like all the way over here, right? Give or take. You know, my feeling about foreshortening is find the end point and everything else will fall into place. People think foreshortening is this like big mystery. It's really not. Find the end point, in this case the knee, and the rest of this business will find itself. Then the tibia coming down this way, right? In relationship to this knee, ankle is about here, coming down to the foot, sitting about here, sitting about there, right? So we start to get the sense of this mass sitting here coming towards us, right? Something like that. Okay, that is good enough for now, but notice like how easily that could have gone off the edge of the page if I hadn't planned, let's say. And then this foot is sitting about here. Something like that. For now. Okay. And then this is coming like so. Navel's about there. Right, if I look at where this direction change is happening, coming across, I'm also thinking about the asis, the top of the box of the iliac crest, etc. Rib cage sitting about here. So rib cage is about there. Moving clavicle. This arm is here, and then coming across the form. Look where the elbow is, right just above the navel there. So once again, we're going to just block this stuff in stick figure form to get our positioning right. Something like that. Hand is sitting there. This arm, elbow's about there, forearm, and once again coming down to the wrist. Happy Teapot, great name. I'm having so much problem with drawing from imagination. What do you suggest? So what we're doing is we're trying to build a vocabulary, right? And if you think about drawing like language, what you're basically telling me is something similar to, I'm English, I'm living in Spain, I'm trying to learn Spanish, but when I go out to speak to Spanish people on the street, even though I'm studying Spanish and I can read it and blah, 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 and then I go to use it and I can't understand what they're saying. Drawing is the same as language. The more we have to build a vocabulary, right? And we only can build that vocabulary through repetition. And it's almost like, a child, when a child is very small, they tend to just blindly copy, right? Mimic their parents. And it takes a while for them to build up the idea, understand sentence structure and vocabulary and all of those things. But they start off just by parroting what the people around them are saying, and eventually they start to get a sense of this, that, and the other. Drawing's no different. So what can you do? What's the suggestion? The suggestion is repetition. The suggestion is build a vocabulary. Well, how am I going to build a vocabulary? For a start, you need a system, right? We were talking about happy accidents earlier. It would be kind of like me walking into the middle of Madrid and hoping I string a sentence together that someone understands, right? You can't rely on happy accidents any more than you could rely on just hoping that you've put the right string of words together. But when I look at a model, and this would apply for drawing from the imagination too, I already have a very good sense of the type of shapes I'm going to use, the order in which I'm going to construct the drawing, right? Here's an exercise you can try, and I don't know, Happy Teapot, I don't know what your level of development is at this point in your journey. But one exercise you can do, like one little figurative exercise you can do, is to just either in your mind's eye or look at a pose, and look at the pose for say 30 seconds, right? And then get rid of it. Take it off your screen or turn away from your subject, and don't belabor the drawing. You're not trying to do a 30-minute drawing here, like 1 minute, 2-minute drawing. What was that pose? Right? You need to develop this muscle. You need to build, and you're only going to do that through practice and repetition. And so that's one exercise you can use. Or take something that you're super familiar with drawing. Like, you know, when I do these demos, like I do an upper and a lower torso demo, I've drawn these things so many, probably at this point, thousands of times, that I don't need any reference in front of me, because I know what the design language is, what it is that I want to kind of say, and I've used a formula so many times that by the time I come to drawing it without reference in front of me, it's not too scary, you know, or hopefully there's a good chance that there'll be success with the drawing. Honestly, there's no magic trick to it, even though it can sometimes feel like there is. It's about practice. It's about practicing every day, and it's about getting out of your comfort zone, but drawing especially when you're trying to learn to draw from your imagination, draw things that are familiar to you. So at least you're not saying, well, how many ears does Mickey Mouse have? Does he have 2 or 3? Okay, we know how many he has, so hopefully that will help make the, you know, at least some of the decision making a little bit more straightforward in your mind. But it really is about grammar. It's about building up the drawing grammar that you're going to use, you know, and that grammar is transferable to other styles, and that, like, once you learn one style, you can then bring that into any other style, really, and with a little bit of adjustment, you can draw in different styles. That's why figure drawing is actually such a useful tool for building the grammar. Sorry, I haven't really been explaining my process here because I'm talking about grammar. But the thing that's nice about drawing the figure, and frustrating about drawing the figure, is we're all so familiar with the figure that there's no kind of cheating it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, if I say, well, draw me a Star Wars spaceship, yeah, you're going to draw me something, and I'm going to be like, well, yeah, that passes as a Star Wars spaceship, but what do I know? But the human body, we all look in the mirror every day, or most of us, right? It's very, very unforgiving in that respect, which is, believe it or not, very, very useful when we're trying to learn the grammar. That's why I'm such an advocate for figure drawing and figurative art. And trust me, I believe personally, if you can draw the figure, you're going to be able to, it's going to teach you a set of observational skills that you're going to be able to take to drawing just about anything. It sounds condescending, or it can sound kind of patronizing, but I believe so much about learning to draw is actually learning how to see, how to see in a different context, right? And that's the skill that you need to develop. It's about developing and building your observational skills. You know, the physical act of drawing, other than a little bit of hand acuity, is not really that difficult, right? It's like, it's not like we're trying to do Olympic barbell lifting here, and like, I can't lift 300 pounds no matter what, but anyone can pick up a pencil, right? Like, it doesn't take some physicality that some of us don't possess, really, you know, barring some unfortunate examples. So then, if that's the case, then, you know, that's actually a wonderful thing, because you can Anyone can theoretically do it. But you need to learn the language of drawing. And when you learn the language and you can speak it fluently, or even you don't have to wait till you're fluent. Just to the point where you can speak it with some sense of understanding. So I hope that makes sense. I know that's a rambling answer to your question, but it kind of, in my mind, it does require a bit of a rambling answer, because, it's like, it's also kind of why I have an issue with a lot of these kind of formulas. Like, there's a place for formula, but people will say to me, like, I can't get proportions right, I can't get proportions right, I can't get proportions right. What's the trick to making my proportions correct? Sometimes the answer is just, why don't you just go away and do it incorrectly 10,000 times? Guess what? If you keep drawing legs too long on your figures, by the 600th time, you're going to have an aha moment where you go, you know what, I'm drawing legs too long. I'm going to try drawing them shorter next time. And it may not happen the next time. It may be 10 times from now. But eventually you're going to start drawing them shorter until they're no longer, you're no longer drawing them too long. And sometimes, like, it's not about formulas or magic potions or anything. It's just like, you got to do stuff wrong a whole bunch of times. Yes, there's things that teachers can do to help speed the process, or to hopefully make the process a little less painful, or give you certain insights which can be valuable. But the bottom line is, anyone that you see that draws well or draws beautifully, or that you admire on some level, guarantee you they've put in the work, right? And that doesn't mean just drawing. You don't just wake up being able to play virtuoso violin, And to that point, I do believe something like drawing and learning to play the violin well probably take roughly around the same amount of time. And isn't it nice that it does, in a way? Because otherwise, if it was just easy, I feel like that wouldn't be any fun. Notice that non-vocal music helps me concentrate better. Absolutely, I believe so. At least for me. Tricep, working my way into the deltoid there. Interesting shape, a little bit awkward, kind of works. How are we doing there, guys? Everyone good? Where are we at? We're at 18 minutes. All right. Yeah, a little bit of a tricky pose, There's some challenges to it. I'm just going in now, really finding where my core shadows are, once again, those ideas of where things turn from light into shadow. Because we're going to be able to use them to help describe anatomy on top of everything else, so it's useful. And the box sitting here. And this box actually something like that, right? And there's actually a cast shadow coming off the box going in this direction, connecting conveniently with her foot there. Something like so. All right, take care, Rick. Good to see you again, man. Hope you're well. Hopefully I'll see you next week. Take care. All right. A lot of this is in tone. Once again, she's got a very tight perm. I'm going to some extent, kind of just take a little bit of artistic license with it because it's so noisy. Alright, and then we've got a strong cast shadow coming down here. And alright. We'll go just like a few more minutes on this one and then we'll call it. So this is in tone. A little bit of tone in here. What is your drawing board sitting on? It looks like it's something narrow but tilted. Basically, normally my drawing board would just be, this bottom edge would be sitting on my lap, leaning against a table or something like that. And that way you can move for closer or further away from the table to find an angle that's, you know, usable. Because I'm trying to draw for camera and I'm trying to draw consistently from, you know, one session to the next with the same setup, I actually built a little understructure. I'll show it to you now for this drawing board. All right. Once again, blend in the direction of the form. So yeah, basically it looks like this. See? I just built that out of an old drawing board, so I didn't need any longer. At one point I had far too many drawing boards. And I don't buy drawing boards, I just buy sheets of MDF from the hardware store because it's way cheaper. And I like having several drawing boards going at once. So there you go. Once again, I'm not thrilled with this drawing, but we'll just go in and just hit a couple of highlights here. No, you're very welcome. Yeah, look, it does the job. It does the job. But it's not a very natural angle actually for drawing, because I try at least to have it so that it's straight on for the camera, which is sitting obviously above my head. If I was drawing just for myself, I'd be drawing on more of an angle of it, more with the drawing facing me. What we want to avoid, as I'm sure you know, but we want to avoid drawing on a flat surface because we'll end up just drawing distorted. Right? The more angle there is between your eyes and the drawing board, the more distortion that can creep into the drawing. So in an ideal world, your board is directly kind of in front of you, while not being on an easel. Let's be very careful about that. So yeah, that's kind of the basic concept there. All right. Yeah, not the prettiest drawing in the world, but you know, we're still getting back into the swing of things here. But it's fine. It's a tricky pose. So even though there's something to keep in mind is, and it's coming all back to this idea of drawing volumetrically and trying to draw mass, is even though, you know, from here pretty much all the way down the form here is hair, right? In that whole section, I still drew the upper torso, even albeit loosely, still drew the clavicle and where the head of the humerus would be here, kind of thing, coming down this way. So we want to draw forms even if we can't see them, because then that way we can have structure to what we can see, rather than an arm just growing out of the side of a torso. Well, if I understand that its origin point was up here and it's gone behind the form and then come back, it just adds a certain level of kind of legitimacy to the drawing, if that makes sense. Cassidy says, I draw with only a simple pencil. I now just got a set of different sketching pencils. Any tips on learning how to use them? I'm used to just balancing my pressure with my hand, so it's kind of new. I have a whole philosophy about how you should hold the pencil, the type of pencil, the type of paper. Cassidy, rather than me boring everyone here who's heard it 100 times already, may I suggest, at least to start with, you check out a video on my channel, and the video is very easy to remember. It's called Probably the Most Important Lesson I Will Ever Give. And yes, it's about holding a pencil. Check out that video. And then if you've got additional questions, you hop on the stream next time or whatever. If you've got like with that knowledge in mind if you've got a more refined question. Because I think that there's fundamental ways that we should, at least when we're starting out, we should kind of approach things that will hopefully set us up for the best result. The one thing I would say is I'm going to guess, and this is purely a guess on my part, I'm going to guess you're working with graphite. That being the case, I would try and find a paper with not too much tooth to it. Right? You know what tooth is? Like how rough the paper is? Like this is newsprint. I'm working with charcoal and this is newsprint and this is really, really smooth. This is the smoothest paper I can actually find. It means that I can draw. The way I like to put it is it's a quick paper. In as much as there's no tooth to it, I can draw fast on it. There's no real drag on the pencil. If you're drawing with graphite, I find photocopy paper has perfect tooth. The nice thing about photocopy paper is also you can get through those 500,000 bad drawings and you're not using nice art paper, right? If you're using charcoal, I would say you want to find a smooth newsprint. That's what I use. But the way that you might notice the way I'm holding my pencil overhand like this rather than handwriting style like this, right? And this way I'm able to draw from the shoulder and the elbow. You'll notice that there's actually very little wrist movement in the way that I draw. Because when you start drawing like this, you become detail orientated and you start focusing in and you tend to draw smaller. I think it's kind of useful. My advice would be pick up a ream of A3 copy paper if you're using graphite pencils and try and draw to within the reasonable boundaries of that paper. You want to give yourself enough geography to work with. People that work tiny, they're not giving themselves any space to move, right? The drawing gets claustrophobic. If you're drawing on this is actually A2, and if you're in America, you're going to have to look up what A2, A3, and A4 means. It's paper sizes here in Europe. It's a standard system. But you have, I know from living in the States, I know that you have comparable paper sizes in this way. 11 by 17 would essentially be A3, give or take. Get you to the same spot, put it that way. Okay, guys, we got one last drawing. 5-minute pose. It's a relatively straightforward pose. Relatively straightforward. 11 I live in Canada, so I'll have to see what it'll be here. Yeah, 11 by 17 I think is what I would suggest. You'll have copy paper that's 11 by 17, I'm pretty sure. That would be my suggestion. It's not to say there isn't a place for drawing smaller, but I think when you're learning, to give yourself that space, it really helps. Please check out probably the most important lesson I'll ever give. If you go to my popular videos on my page, I think it's probably like the 3rd or 4th one along, and it's a picture of me holding a pencil like this. Pretty straightforward to find. Okay, let's hit the clock. We got 5 minutes, guys and gals. Let's do it. Okay, this leg's coming forward here. Pencil's not working. A twist in the torso, so our center line goes something like that. Rib cage sitting in here. The all-important ASIS, which is very, very clear. At least on her left side, right here, we can see it very, very clearly. On this side, it's hard to see because of the compression, but we know it. We know it's about here, right? Manubrium coming up clavicle. These arms are going off this way. This one's coming off like this, and then they're going back. Very dramatic pose. She's like, oh, what are you doing to me? You're drawing me so badly. I'm sorry. Okay. Two-minute mark. Okay, so the oblique is sitting in here. Tensor fasciolata is sitting there. Tibia coming down this way. Sartorius. Okay, 2.5 minutes. So we're going from what's essentially the latissimus scapula rib cage down to the oblique, which is really stretched compared to this side where there's a lot of compression. Okay, deltoid will be sitting up there. Trapezius, not trapezius, sorry, tricep. Looks like her nose is back here. .57, 1 minute to go. Okay. All right, almost there. And I think for a gesture pose, 5 minute, that probably does it. Excuse me. Took me forever to find a steady supply of newsprint in Europe. I finally found this company called Sea White that makes it here. Jackson sells it in the UK and ships it across Europe. Great. If that's working for you, that's brilliant. I use a supplier, school supplier, that it's you buy it by the ream, and it's pretty reasonably priced. But if you've got someone that's shipping to Europe, then awesome. Guys, we made it. So thank you so much for joining me. it's been fun. It's been really nice to get back on the stream and to chat with you all. I'd say, all things being equal, we'll be back this time next week, and we'll do it all again. If you've got any questions in the meantime, or anything you'd like me to discuss on next week's stream, please leave a comment on the video. Probably not in this chat, because I probably won't see it. But on the video, if you leave it in the video proper, that would be awesome. And I'll see you all next week.